really, really comfortable coming. We're asking her lots and lots of questions. Okay, we're very, very privileged to have you this morning, and I'll just let you get stuck in.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, guys. It's really nice to be here. My name is Jacinda Ardern. I'm a Labour Member of Parliament, so that means that I'm currently in the opposition rather than one of the MPs who's in government or in charge at the moment. So that means when it comes to things like alcohol legislation, we're not actually the ones who are sitting and designing all of the law at the moment, but we do all have a vote on it. And I think it's fair to say the alcohol discussion at the moment and the changes that are being proposed, it's probably some of the most significant debate we've seen around alcohol in a really long time. Well, I want to start with a generic question for you guys. Put your hand up if you think that we have a problem with alcohol in New Zealand. Okay, so everyone thinks that there's a bit of an issue. Put your hand up if you think that the problem is that we're binge drinkers. Okay, so pretty much consensus then that there's a bit of a problem in New Zealand. Put your hand up if you think drinking alcohol in of itself is an issue. Okay, so general consensus then from everyone that the problem is that we're just drinking too much in one go. So that's really hasn't been something that we've sat down and as a parliament had a bit of a debate over. It is actually the way we drink in New Zealand that is the problem as opposed to the fact that we drink in and of itself, even though alcohol is obviously a drug. But a lot of the debate instead has been angled at you guys. So of all the things that you've heard talked about around the alcohol debate, what have you seen the most coverage of?
Teenagers.
Sorry? Was it?
Teenagers.
Teenagers,
Yeah.
yeah. So the drinking age, right, has been what's been discussed the most. Why do you think that is? Yeah.
Because it got lowered in 1999.
It did. It did get lowered in 1999. So it got lowered right when I was roughly 19 years old. I can tell you though, my friends were drinking well before that. And probably you guys would know that most teenagers are drinking before they're legally able to purchase alcohol. Well, what are some other reasons you think it's been the drinking age has been discussed so much? Yeah.
It's really cheap.
It's cheap? So do you think that that means that young people are more inclined to drink because it's cheap? And
Yeah,
that
they're more encouraged.
Okay, okay. Why else do you think people wanted to debate the age more than anything else? Yeah.
Is it because it's becoming more and more normal for people to drink?
Yeah, I think that's probably been part of it as well. There's been part of the argument has been, well, actually, we're concerned not so much about 18-year-olds drinking, we're concerned about 16 and 15 and 14-year-olds drinking, so we need to move it up so that all those young people who are already not meant to be drinking can't access alcohol. So that's a bit interesting that we're using the age, moving it to affect a group of people who already, under the law, aren't meant to be purchasing alcohol. Do you know, one of the other reasons I think we talk about the age a lot is because the age is often used as a conscience vote. Does anyone know what a conscience vote is? Have you heard of this being used before? Yeah, okay, so there are certain laws in Parliament when we're debating them, when we come to vote on them, we generally vote as a party, as a bloc. So my vote will go with my other 35 roughly colleagues as a bloc vote on an issue. But there are certain things that, like almost the kinds of laws that are in the Bible, kind of laws like prostitution, civil unions, gay marriage, gambling, and alcohol, they are treated as conscience votes. So that means as individuals, we get to decide how we're going to vote. Doesn't matter what our party's thinking it might do, we get to just individually make a decision on that. And so that means it kind of becomes interesting for the media because they don't know what's going to happen. So when it comes to the drinking age, suddenly we'll have all these journalists calling us going, so what are you going to do? Are you voting to keep it 18? Are you voting to raise it? And so then it gets discussed a little bit more because people think it's interesting that we don't know what's going to happen and that individual MPs can make a different decision. So that becomes a little bit of part of it, I think, the reason why it gets a bit more coverage. But one of the ultimate reasons I think is that it's a little bit easier sometimes if you're an adult or a politician who drinks yourself to try and say that you're not part of the problem, and to try and push kind of part of that problem onto a younger generation and say, well, all of our issues sit down here with these delinquent young people who are drinking too much and stumbling down the streets and, are intoxicated and what have you. But if you're telling me that you think New Zealand has a binge culture, then that's about all of us, isn't it? It's not just about young people. So, if you guys were in charge, tell me, what do you think would make the biggest difference to our binge culture? If you could start from scratch, what would you guys be doing if you're in government? Maybe we should start with the stuff that you think makes a difference. You said price, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
So raise the price of alcohol.
Okay, so you think price is an issue. Do you think people drink more because it's cheap? Do you think alcohol's cheap in New Zealand? Yeah.
It's cheaper than going to the movies.
It is cheap. It's a good point. I haven't heard that one before. It is cheaper than going to the movies. It's true. And sometimes
What kind of
it's
alcohol
cheaper
do you
than
drink?
other cans of soft drink. Yeah, I had someone show me a survey that showed how much alcohol was per standard drink, and it can be pretty cheap. Pretty cheap. All right, so what else? So we think price really matters. So if price was a bit high, you think people would not drink as much, perhaps?
Yeah, because you couldn't afford as much.
Because you couldn't afford as much. Yeah.
I'm like advertising and stuff.
Advertising. Interesting. Okay, so tell me about what you think is wrong with advertising at the moment.
Just like famous people drinking and everything
Yeah.
like that. It's like All Blacks drinking
Yep.
beer and everything.
Yep. Do you think that they try and target particular people?
Yeah. Like RTDs with teenagers.
Right. They're not meant to. But at the moment, advertisers are covered by a code. So basically, they're kind of just meant to behave in a particular way. And there's been a bit of resistance to trying to put it in law how advertisers are meant to behave. But they spend a lot of money on advertising. Now, they wouldn't be spending that amount of it on advertising if they didn't think it made a difference. Now, alcohol companies will tell you is, we're not trying to get people to drink more, we're just trying to shift them from one brand over to our brand. And I know people who've worked in the industry, and they keep measures of how much quantity they're selling, not whether or not they're increasing their market share. For them, it's all about volume. And the volume in New Zealand is increasing a lot. Okay, so we've got price and we've got advertising. Anything else you think you guys would make a difference?
Getting up.
Okay, so everywhere you go, if it's a big event, you can probably pretty much buy alcohol. Yeah. Someone once said to me that in New Zealand, drinking is the activity. You know, and that lots of overseas countries actually, you'll have an event and there might be some drinks available, but it's not the main activity. But yeah, for us, sometimes alcohol is the event. Yeah. Especially if you grow up in a small town like Lawrenceville. Okay. Anything else? We've got three. We've got price, advertising, and we've got availability. Yeah.
More health campaigns around.
Okay. So you think that would, if we had more campaigns around the damage that alcohol would do, people might drink less?
Yeah, it could like educate our youth and minors.
Yeah.
And just show them the effects it does, and
Yeah.
show them what it's like to be a heavy drinker, and
Yeah.
kind of change their perception of it.
Yeah. So you guys have learned about that in health. Yeah. Did you learn about it before that?
No.
Had you already started drinking by the time you were learning about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say that's probably pretty common. Yeah. What else? No one's mentioned age. So no one said, oh, change the time at which you can buy it. That's interesting. You don't think it'll make a difference?
No.
Not really.
Well, like, because it's not gonna like change straight away with binge drinking culture.
Yeah.
So if you start like aiming to change how the youth think how we drink, that will like affect them through life. And
Yeah,
then
right.
you like get all your ideas and stuff from your parents.
Yeah.
So like our children will have like the same kind of drinking values we
Yeah.
do.
So you're saying it's more of a cultural thing than necessarily a legal thing?
Yep.
Yeah. Because that's interesting, because we actually don't have a legal age that you can or can't drink in New Zealand, right? So you can technically drink at any age, but what can't you do? You can't buy it until you're a particular age. But we have pretty lax laws at the moment around supply. So can someone explain to me how it works around supply? So if you're a young person and you get alcohol from your parents, if you're 14 and your mum gives you a beer, is that legal?
Yeah.
Yep. If you go round to your uncle's place and he's got a beer in the fridge and you're 15 and you ask if you can have one, is that legal?
Yeah.
Yep. If your uncle goes into an alcohol shop and buys beer for you at 15 and gives it to you, is he meant to do that? Now that's where it's interesting. Technically, no. You're not meant to buy with the express idea of giving it to a young person. But if you happen to have it and give it to you and it wasn't just bought for you, then that's different. Now isn't that a little bit crazy? So that's how the law works at the moment. The change that's been proposed though is that you can only be supplied if you're under the age if your parent or guardian has given consent. So if you go around to a friend's party and there's alcohol there, your friend's parents would technically have had to have asked for consent from your parents for you to be able to drink that, and they have to provide it responsibly. So that's one of the changes that we're going to see if it goes through. Just to recap, then, you guys had price, advertising. You're interested in public health campaigns and shifting the culture, and there was a question of access. So what has the government done? If that's your list of things that will make a difference, tell me, who can tell me what the big changes are that the government's proposing? I can run through them with you if you...
Split age.
Split age, yep. So tell me how that's going to work.
I think it was if you're 18 you can buy alcohol from an online source business.
Yep.
So like a bar or a restaurant.
Yep.
But if you're, and then when you're 20 you can buy it from like an alcohol shop.
Yep.
And like you talked about creating like a culture shift rather than like changing laws and stuff. But when I was doing my research, what I found was like were kind of intertwined. Like in order to change the
Yeah.
culture, you had to have some sort of like legal change as well
Yeah.
to make society follow.
We thought that in 1999 as well. There was this idea, because I remember some of the debate, that, you know, if we're encouraging, if young people are already drinking, this was the idea, if 18-year-olds are already drinking, wouldn't it be better if we just had them doing it in a safe, legal environment? So if they were able to then purchase in bars and so on. And now suddenly we're going, oh no, that hasn't worked, we need to put it back up again. Do you know, I think the problem is we changed the age without ever really making much of an attempt to change the culture. You know, we just did that and thought that that would be enough. But, yeah.
Do you reckon that they changed the age because Australia changed the age?
I've never really heard that being discussed.
Or like just to like align themselves with other countries around the world?
If we were doing that, I think in Germany you can drink
With
beer from
16,
16. Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, it's interesting. I don't remember at that time that being discussed too much, or I haven't heard it really come up too much in the debate at the moment. There's been a lot of discussion about different drinking cultures, and often people say, well, what's the difference between us and those other cultures who don't have this binge drinking culture? And I'd say we have to look beyond young people just to see what's the difference there. Some places it's really expensive. In Norway, alcohol is really, really expensive. Same in Sweden. In Sweden, people drive to Denmark to get really, really drunk and then drive back to Sweden the next day. I've seen them, they're all in the streets. So, yeah, I mean, there are lots of different, but Australia, no, they didn't come up too much, I don't think. Could have been. So the split culture thing, the split age now, there's this idea that, oh, if we say 18 you can drink in a bar, then we'll have 18-year-olds in safe bar environments. And then if we say 25 licensing, no one will go and purchase their own alcohol and get drunk at home until they're 20. Do you think it'll work like that?
No.
Right. So you don't think that there's actually going to be too much issue for a young person who wants to get hold of alcohol to get hold of alcohol?
Well, I mean, like, if you want to get hold of any substance, you should get hold of it.
Yeah.
Like age or whatever. If you really want to, you can get hold of it.
Where do you think most people who are not of the age that they can buy, where do you think most young people get their alcohol from? Parents. Yep, roughly 50%. Yeah, roughly 50% get it from their parents. Yep. And
Have you guys thought about making a drinking age? So like under 18s are not allowed to buy alcohol, and then
Or
are
drink
not
it.
allowed to drink alcohol. So then the parents won't give them alcohol.
yeah, do you know what? I mean, I guess the argument that might come back on that is that, you know, a lot of parents have a really responsible kind of way of teaching their child about alcohol consumption. And a lot of parents want that freedom to make alcohol not this drug that can't be used until you're 18 and then suddenly you are allowed to drink it and suddenly, it's just this, binge fest. A lot of young, parents want to be able to acclimatise their young people to alcohol. So I guess if you suddenly had a ban on being able to consume it to 18, that would remove a parent's ability to make that decision with their child, I guess. So, no, there hasn't been much discussion about that. But, I mean, given what you know or have learned about how it affects the brain, do you think that's what should happen in New Zealand?
Possibly, because doesn't Australia have that? Or like America has that, like with 21.
Yeah, I don't know that it's not that it's a purchase age still, is it, in the United States, I think. Yeah.
But in America you weren't allowed to like even go into an alcohol shop
Yeah.
or like touch it.
Yeah, it is pretty strict over there. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting. We've never really had the discussion of saying no alcohol and a complete prohibition for young people. I think that would be very hard to enforce in New Zealand. Yeah. But, I mean, whilst a lot of parents are really responsible suppliers to their kids, some aren't. My dad's a policeman. We have big debates about this issue because I'm voting to keep it at 18. And I can give you the reason for that. But he wants to see it lifted. He picks kids up off the street who are, 13 years old, who have just been sitting there drinking straight vodka all night, taking them back to their parents' house. Parents are annoyed with him for waking them up. That was what they gave little Johnny to entertain himself and send him off downtown. I mean, that is not the norm, but that does happen from time to time. And I'd want some kind of ability to do something about that because that is just wrong when a child is that young. So that's the dilemma. So, then what we had on the listing, they're looking at a split age. What else is on the government's list of what they're going to do? I know, right? It's only been the split age that's been talked about. I'll run you through a couple of others. They're talking about doing something called local alcohol plans. Bit of a mouthful. But this is something that communities have been asking for. Because at the moment, I don't know if you've been down K Road recently, there are a lot of little grocery stores selling alcohol. That was never meant to happen. In 1999, when they decided that grocery stores should be able to sell alcohol, they kind of meant the big supermarkets, but instead dairies have started selling it. So not only will that no longer be allowed to happen, they're also going to give local councils the ability to write up their own plans to say, well, actually, we don't want alcohol outlets to open in these areas around schools. We don't want more than X number selling alcohol. We want opening hours to be X and Y. So allowing local communities to decide how they want alcohol sold in their area. So that's one of the powers that local communities will have. They're setting default opening hours. So if a local council doesn't
Sorry for the
decide...
interruption. Could any of the students involved in the Ki Aroha visit, could you please make your way to level 5 now? Thank you.
So if a local area doesn't decide kind of the times that they want alcohol sold, then there'll be a default time. It's 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. for an off license, and 8 a.m. to 4 a.m. for an on license. So those are the default hours. What do you think of those? Pretty easy. If you want to drink, literally you will be able to find a drink at any hour of the day in New Zealand. They've also set some new rules around RTDs. RTDs can't be more than 1.5 standard drinks in a bottle and can't be more than 5% alcohol. Why do you think the government's honed in on RTDs?
Because teenagers, yeah.
Yeah.
Teenagers always drink them.
Easy to
like the
drink
younger,
them?
yeah.
Yep.
Below 18, try to drink them, yeah.
Right. So it kind of seemed like they're targeted at young people, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's interesting when I've asked, I was sitting in on a select committee where we were talking about RTDs, and I asked the other MPs who's tried an RTD. It's not a drink that most politicians grew up with. RTDs haven't always existed. If you ask most of the politicians what it was that they drank when they were young, beer or, you know, cask wine, or, you know, sherry that they stole from their parents' liquor cabinet. RTDs didn't exist back when most politicians were young. So they see RTDs as a problem for young people and a reason that young people are drinking a lot. One of the interesting things they found in Australia, though, when they cracked down on RTDs, and I can't remember exactly what they did, but they came down on them pretty hard. They saw a real big increase in the amount of straight spirits that people started buying and mixes. So what alcohol shops started doing was deals on package deals, so you could get rum and coke together as a nice little package deal. And they found that there was of the volume of alcohol that was sold in RTDs, they saw a much bigger increase in the volume of spirits that was sold after they cracked down on RTDs. And that was because people started mixing their own. And do you think when you guys mix your own that you're quite as careful with the measures as an RTD is? And a bit of this, half and half, you know? And that's exactly what happened in Australia. So the volume of alcohol that was sold didn't actually decrease, it went up. So we're always in politics looking at the unintended consequences of stuff like that. Okay, so that's one of the other things they're looking at doing. The consent thing we've already talked about, what they're going to do around changing what happens with people who supply, having to get permission from parents. Advertising, they're going to make it an offence if you deliberately target young people. So it's really obvious in an ad that you're targeting young people, that's not allowed. And if you try and encourage overconsumption in your ads. I haven't seen many ads that do that. I mean, they're a lot more clever than that. But also, if you have advertising that's just about discounting, big discounting. So if you say, we've got a sausage sizzle and as much free booze as you like for $5, you won't be allowed to do that. That's about it in the advertising space, really. So not as much as you guys probably would have thought would be necessary. So if we look at your list, and then we look at the government's list, do you think that they're really hitting the stuff that you think is going to make a difference? What do you think the big gap is?
The culture?
Culture? Yeah. Yeah, and what else?
I just think we're really uneducated about what alcohol can do to you.
Yeah. So culture and education, things that you... And the one that you mentioned, price.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything about price.
What was the
Nothing.
reasoning behind taking alcohol to supermarkets?
Yes.
Putting it into supermarkets back in '99. I can't quite remember what the issue. It probably was simply a convenience issue. I don't know whether or not it was trying to break the monopoly of alcohol liquor stores. I'd say it was simply convenience.
Because alcohol in supermarkets is a big issue.
Yeah.
Like, there's specials all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a bottle of wine for what, $5, $6
Can.
if you want.
This has been a big part of this debate around price. If we're still going to keep it in supermarkets, should supermarkets be able to do something called loss lead? Do you know what loss leading is? So supermarkets want to get you guys into their store. That's their main aim. And so they'll pick a product that they will discount so heavily that they're making a loss on it. It's so cheap that they are actually not making any money. In fact, they're losing money by selling it at the price that they are. Alcohol is an example where there's always been a suspicion that supermarkets have loss lead on it. So this, selling wine at $6 when actually you couldn't get it anywhere else at that price, and sometimes the fact that restaurateurs will go to supermarkets to buy their alcohol for their restaurants because it's cheaper than what they can get from a supplier suggests that something's going on. So Select Committee, which is the body in Parliament that was hearing the public on this bill, asked the supermarkets to come in and said to them, we think you're loss leading on alcohol. And they denied it. They've always denied that they've done that with alcohol, but we've always been a bit suspicious. So instead of the government doing something on price, it's now said that it's going to collect data on what happens with discounting of alcohol, which I think is a bit of a cop-out, if I'm honest. I think it's obvious that this kind of thing goes on. So, and also, when you've got a supermarket that's open 24/7, then you can buy it at, most hours, and also alcohol is put sometimes at the end of particular lanes, so it's not like it's isolated down at one part of the supermarket. And we had, people who suffered from alcoholism, who really struggled with sobriety, coming to the select committee and saying, I can't go to the supermarket without seeing alcohol all around me, and I really struggle with that. So one of the things I think should have been in this bill is a discussion around price and an idea called minimum pricing. Have you heard of this idea? So every bottle of alcohol has a certain number of standard drinks in it, right? RTDs often have 1.5. A bottle of wine has, how many does a bottle of wine have? Like 8 or something like that. So if you suddenly decided, well, alcohol should not be any less than X amount per standard drink, that would mean that you would never get an RTD that was cheaper than Coke, or you wouldn't be able to sell wine for $5 because you would have a minimum price per standard drink. The difference between doing that and a tax is that the supermarket could just absorb the tax and still sell it really cheap. Whereas a minimum pricing means that you can't loss lead on something. So that's the difference between those two options. The government didn't want to put minimum pricing in, and when I came out and said that I was in favour of an idea like minimum pricing, I had a lot of old people very angry that I was going to increase their cheap wine. So it does have some people who are against it. So why do you think the government hasn't done anything on pricing? If you guys think it was the number one thing you first named, why do you think they haven't done anything on it? Do you think they need some more data?
Maybe do they get money from it?
Some people have asked me about that. I certainly have never had any offer of money as a politician from the liquor industry. They do come and see me and try and talk to me about their issues, but I'll always be as open and frank with them about my views as I am with you guys. So it's pretty transparent in New Zealand. But I don't know what might persuade other politicians. Why? Any other reasons why you think they haven't changed it? Do you know why? I think because they get the same letters that I get. There are lots of their voters who don't want to pay more to buy booze. And at the end of the day, politicians have to get voted in to be in charge. Now, I would rather take a bit of a hit for it because I think it's the right thing to do. But some politicians take different views on whether or not, pricing is the right way to deal with this issue. Yeah.
Is there a tax around that?
There is an excise tax, yes, which is why.
Do you know much about that? Like, or how much?
I don't know what the current rate of the excise tax is, but we tax things that we think have social harm on them.
It's like smoking, obviously. So
Smoking gets adjusted frequently to try and discourage people from smoking, and also to counter the amount of cost then when you come through the health system as a consequence. We don't do it to the same degree with alcohol, but there is an excise, which is why when you come through duty-free, it's cheaper. But excise doesn't mean that a supermarket has to sell it at a certain price. They can just absorb the tax.
They pay it.
Yeah.
Well, with smoking, you know how they've made that rule where it has to be behind those closed cupboards? Why don't they do that with supermarkets? Because, I'll go to get, a drink or something and it's right next to the alcohol. Why don't they have, a separate room we have to go to?
Yeah, we had a bit of a discussion about that, actually. We thought, if we are going to change the hours that alcohol is able to be sold, what's going to happen with a 24/7 supermarket? And what the supermarkets told us is that they would basically have alcohol then at one end of their supermarket and they would have screens. So they can do that, but at the moment they don't because they don't need to. So
quite often people are just opportunistic and they see alcohol and they're like, oh yeah, I can get some.
Especially if it's at a heavily discounted price, right? So we do think that it should be, if we change the hours, then a lot of supermarkets will be forced to do that, keep it cordoned off at a separate area and screened at separate hours of the day, which means it'll be harder for them to stick little selling points at the end of the aisles as well. So, there it is. I mean, you've got your list of things that you would think would make a big difference and then a list of things that the government is doing. And some gaps there, right? And I, I have mixed views about why I think that is, and you'll form your own views as well as to why we're probably not making the most of this opportunity. But ultimately, we are a bit constrained. As politicians, there's only a couple of options we have. We have the option of changing the law. We can sometimes change the price of things through tax or through things like minimum pricing. We can give departments money to run campaigns, but so things like it's not what we're drinking, it's how we're drinking. The campaign around having conversations with your friends, a lot of those are funded by government money. Do you think, but you guys think we need a bit more of that, is that right?
Well, the ones around drink driving and crashing and stuff have obviously lowered how many times we have crashes and drink drive in New Zealand. Because none of us would think, oh yeah, let's go drink drive. Like all of us think, no way. You know what I mean? So if there was
Tell me about that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think?
Because you might die.
But has it been advertising that's done that for you guys?
Yeah. Seeing ads on TV of how you can crash and die.
Yeah. Do you think that's made the biggest difference? Has it been the
Yeah.
advertising? Or has it been that you know that your peers would be like, what are you doing? You know, that it's not acceptable amongst your group to do that?
Yeah, but
It's
that's
not
because of the
acceptable because
thing,
of the
do you know what I
advertising.
mean?
Yeah, so you think that the advertising has happened and then suddenly it's been unacceptable to
Yeah.
behave in that kind of way and therefore people stop doing it?
Because before there wasn't advertising, so people didn't think, why not? People just thought, why not? We
Yeah.
might as well just drink drive.
Because I grew up right on the edge of when that change was starting to happen. And particularly in smaller rural towns, there weren't taxis where I grew up. So it was kind of acknowledged that actually driving at particular times of the night wasn't very safe because people were going home from the pub. And that's just the way it was. You know, I still have memories of very scary car trips in the back of my friend's dad's car because he would drink and drive all the time. And all of my peer group knew someone who had died in a drunk driving accident. You know, my uncle, was in a severe one. My friend's cousin died in one. We had a girl in my year crash into a tree at school in a car full of drunk young people. So it wasn't that long ago that was happening a lot. And then Students Against Driving Drunk, that organisation in schools. Do you have one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, almost every school for a period had one of those groups. And they were really, really important in kind of changing that view. We didn't have a huge amount of the advertising then, a bit. But at the moment, do you think, though, people look down on you if you come to school and you've had a really big weekend and you've had a massive hangover? Do people think, oh, lame? No?
Not really.
That's the thing. I reckon
School
that'll
drunk.
be the day when things will change. Yeah. And I wonder how as a politician I can help speed that up. I don't think it's just by changing the age on you, which is why I don't support raising the age. I also don't support raising the age because I've met 18-year-olds who drink more responsibly than some of my 30-year-old friends. So I don't think that's the decision that I want to impose on them. Instead, I would rather see all of us just changing the way that we behave. So any last things that you want me to take back to Parliament on this one? Because we'll be voting soon on this. We've had second stage of, you guys know how the process works in Parliament? Shall I run you through it really quickly? Because this is how it works for all of them, and then you'll know how it works when we're talking about bills being debated. So everything that, before a law is a law, it's called a bill. Once it's called law, that means it's gone through all of its stages, or an act. So bill becomes act, and then it's in force. So a government minister, will draft a bill. This particular one came after the Law Commission did a lot of work on it. They drafted a bill and then they put it before Parliament, and it had what was called its first reading. They call it first reading because back in the day, when not everyone who was in Parliament in the UK could read, they would literally stand up and read out an entire bill in the debating chamber for all of the politicians to hear. They don't do that anymore. They expect us all to be literate. So when you have a first reading, you basically spend 2 hours debating the new bill that the ministers brought down to Parliament. So we spend 2 hours debating it, And then we send it off to select committee. Select committee is where a committee of MPs from all across the different parties, usually made up of about 12 members of parliament, through from Labour, National, Greens, New Zealand First, ACT and United Future don't generally participate because there's only one of each. And then we'll ask the public to come and see us at the select committee and tell us their views. And we'll spend 6 weeks doing that. So that's when the public has their say. On alcohol, there were a lot of people who came to talk to us about their views on it. And any one of you could have. You could write us one-page submission saying, I don't think the drinking age should be raised, and here's why. And I would like to come and tell you about that. And then you could come in and spend 5 minutes telling us your view. Anyone in New Zealand can do that. Once we've finished doing that, we might, after all of that evidence and expert advice, we might make a couple of changes to the bill. And then we send it back to Parliament, where it will have its second reading. So we debate it again and look at all the changes that the select committee made and say, we think this is good, we think this is bad. Then we do something called committee stages. Now that's a bit of a traditional thing. The bombie knocker that always sits in the debating chamber when we're in session moves under the table. The speaker gets out of his chair and comes down and sits at a table. The minister who's in charge of the bill sits next to him, and then all of the MPs can suddenly just jump up on their feet and try and get the speaker's attention to spend 5 minutes debating the bill. It's a bit of a chaotic thing. It's not as ordered as the other readings. So we could spend 6 hours doing that, just jumping up, giving 5-minute speeches. And if there's a reason why you want to slow something down from becoming law, you'll use that stage to, just like the West Wing, to try and drag that bit of the debate out. Sometimes we can keep it going for hours. Once that's done, then we have what's called third reading, and then that's it. That's the final chance for everyone to have their say. Then it gets sent off to the Governor-General, will come in on a Monday, sit down and sign the front of the bill. And that's when it's given its royal assent. So technically the Queen is still the final person who signs off our laws, or her representative. And once that's done, then something becomes law. So that's how it works. So we're pretty much in the middle of that process. It's come back from the Select Committee, we're debating it in the House now at the moment. And that's how it works for all of them. So now you know how a bill becomes law. Pretty exciting, eh? And you can watch it on Parliament TV. Has anyone ever watched Parliament TV? Go on. I won't tell anyone if you have. But you should flick on sometime. Flick on sometime just to see what it's like. I suggest flicking on late at night because it gets a little more rowdy then. We debate till 10 o'clock at night, and some MPs have a glass of wine with dinner, and they just get a little more excited in their speeches.
I want to do that.
Yeah. So, guys, got any questions for me? Anything that you want to know about this? Or anything you want to know about Parliament or being an MP, anything like that? Anything at all?
How did you get that job? Like, how did that start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I joined a political party, the Labour Party, when, how old are you guys?
17.
Yeah, I was your age. When I was your age, I
How
joined,
old?
yeah, I know, why would you join a
No, not
political
why,
party?
just how.
How?
How did that happen?
Well, nowadays you can just join online. I joined because I was always, one of these young people who kind of cared about social justice and was really involved with Amnesty International and that kind of thing. And I had a friend who was someone I knew who was a member of Parliament. And he offered for me to come down and help campaign with him in New Plymouth. I lived in little old Morins, which is a really small rural town. And Labour never won there. So being in a campaign it wasn't too exciting because you always knew you were going to lose. So in my school holidays, I would drive my little Toyota Corolla with its 4 gears down to New Plymouth, and I would campaign with him for a couple of weeks. And I kept doing that until I hit 19, and we had the election in 1999, and Labour won, which was really exciting then. And after I finished university, I interned down in Parliament, and eventually got offered a job working down there. I ended up working in Phil Goff's office when he was Minister of Justice. And then I worked for Helen Clark for a year when she was the Prime Minister.
What did you have to do, Ian?
Well, you know, I studied international relations and communication studies at Waikato University. But if you're interested in politics, you can really study anything, actually. Because in politics, the best thing you can do is just have a wide range of experience. Because, you know, Parliament's meant to be a place where you represent the people. And so having actually just a really good knowledge of politics doesn't mean you have a really good knowledge of life and what's happening in New Zealand and all the different sectors that need representatives. So you can study anything and get involved in politics. So yeah, I was 25 when I worked for Helen Clark. I was too young for that job. It was a great job, but it's still probably one of the hardest jobs that I did. I worked for her during the 2005 election period. And she works harder than anyone I knew, other than Phil Goff. He worked really hard as well. Yeah. So he used to play squash at 11 o'clock at night. Play squash at 11 o'clock at night.
Probably drunk.
Anyone at all interested in politics?
No.
Good! Tell me though, if I was going to ask you, what's your biggest bugbear about what's going on in New Zealand right now? What's something that really irritates you, or you think's just a bit wrong, or
In terms of alcohol, do you mean?
not anything?
Just in general?
Just anything, yeah.
The rules on abortion.
Abortion law. Interesting.
What's that?
Too constrained?
No.
Just,
It shouldn't be legal to have abortion.
it shouldn't be legal. Okay, so you think it should be
It's
illegal?
just too easy, I think.
It's interesting because a lot of people think it's too hard. Some people go to Australia because they
Oh,
can't
really?
access them here.
Okay.
I'll do
You
it.
basically have to get 2 medical opinions that show that you would be mentally damaged by having the child in order to be able to access an abortion. So in lots of countries that's almost considered not access because the threshold's quite high, and because you have to have it within a certain period of time. That's why some people end up going to Australia. Yeah. Interesting. See, those are the kinds of issues that trigger people getting into politics sometimes, because almost anything you can think of, actually, politicians have the power to change. Abortion we avoid debating though. It's one of those topics that's a bit, people don't like talking about it in Parliament.
So with the alcohol culture thing, are they actually talking about it at all in the government, or just kind of just forgetting about it and missing it out?
They're not talking about it a lot. I think that's fair, actually. And the only thing that's getting much of your time is being driven by the media because they're interested in the age. And I think it's because they know what they're doing probably isn't going to fix much. Because if we were going to fix anything, it'd probably need to be quite bold, and that would upset some voters. So, yeah. I once on television talked about minimum pricing, and I got a flood of
Beating?
letters.
Oh.
No, Barbara, yes. Wine, sherry, all of that would suddenly cost too much. People were angry. Yeah. Hey, but I'm getting even more letters about gay marriage now. Been watching that debate?
Oh yeah, what's going on with that?
Well, there's when you're not in government, you basically can't write laws, except you have this thing called members' bills. So because I'm not in government, and if I want to change something, the only way I can do it is by drafting my own bill, putting it into a ballot, and having it drawn out of a hat, which happens about roughly once a month. And someone called Louisa Wall, who's in the Labour Party, she drew up a bill which would allow gay people access to marriage. And it was drawn out of a hat, basically. So now it's before Parliament. So or will be debated very soon. Because at the moment in New Zealand, you can have a civil union if you're a gay person. But if a church wants to offer marriage, you can't legally be married in New Zealand. Our laws don't allow it, which means that you can't adopt. And there are certain, and it means that your union's actually not recognised overseas at the moment if you're a gay couple. So that's what's being proposed. Do you think that should change? Do you think gay people should be allowed to get married?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Really.
Yeah.
There's like, what are the reasons of why not?
Most people who I will be voting in favour of it.
Yeah.
So I think that people should. I just think it's about equality.
Yeah.
Should have the same.
Equal
And I don't think
rights,
actually it's for governments to decide that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think if you want to recognise your relationship in that kind of way, that's for you to decide, and
Yeah.
it's for the church to decide if they want to offer it, and they don't have to. But most people who have objected to it, who have written to me, have done so on religious grounds. Mostly.
Oh, okay.
Mostly, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, opinion really
And I respect everyone's right to hold that opinion, but it's just not the one that I have.
Leaving someone in the sky.
Anything else, guys, you want to talk about?
Something that I've been reading the recommendations because you guys have to approach through them.
Yeah.
And I've read a couple of people have mentioned the fact that under 20 there's zero tolerance in terms of drink driving,
Yeah.
whereas over 20 there is an allowance.
Yeah, yeah.
So some people are recommending having if you drink alcohol, you can drive.
Yeah.
Like,
It's interesting because this has been something that's been debated, and in fact we supported the zero tolerance under 20 thing, but we also supported dropping the threshold so that, because a lot of people don't understand how much they can drink before they're going to be over the limit. It's, you know, because it's a breathalyzer limit or a blood alcohol limit, and it doesn't make much sense when you're trying to translate into how many drinks you can have. So there has been a bit of a move to turn it into 0.5 milligrams per litre. So anyway, basically lowering the threshold so that roughly you'd know you couldn't have more than 2 glasses. Because at the moment when they started doing rough experiments with journalists and seeing how much they could drink before they hit the threshold, and were really alarmed by how much they could consume. So they started a little bit of a campaign. And there is a lobby group on this because of the number of deaths that are caused when people are under the limit but have drunk over 0, I think it's 0.5. So there's this middle bit in here where quite a few people cause crashes. And so I support lowering it, but I support lowering it so it's easy for people to understand and then get what
once
the
you
limit
start
is.
drinking, you kind of lose track and then you got to like
It
time and all that kind of thing.
It impairs your judgment.
Something that's quite good in Australia, which I noticed, is like at RSLs, they've all got the breathalyzers, like as soon as you leave.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing, I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, my friend's family has one, but it turns into a drinking game. You know, have you drunk enough to get the breathalyzer going, you know? So I think having it set at a threshold when people really know that, you know, that actually choose as much as anyone can have. Don't even worry about weight or how much you weigh, whether you're a woman or a man. 2 standard drinks. I think that'd be a lot easier. So you guys are all set for your assignment then?
Yep.
Okay, if I haven't answered anything, you can find me online on Facebook or Twitter and ask me anything more. Happy to fill in the gaps. Yay. Thanks for letting me digress a little bit.
Just a friend. Elliot. Elliot.
Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us about alcohol issues.
Thank you. Oh, thanks very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay.